distinguished guests and delegates, this is the last session of our conclave, and it gives me great pleasure and a rare privilege to welcome our keynote speaker of this evening, an extraordinary woman of our times, a woman of indomitable spirit, the first woman ruler in the modern history of Islam, one of the youngest prime ministers in the world at the age of 35, a Harvard graduate and an Oxford Union president, a mother of 3 teenagers, a political prisoner and an exile, a fighter who never gives up, and now all set for a dramatic homecoming. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mrs. Benazir Bhutto, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, who is now waging the biggest battle of her political life. I'm especially relieved to see her here because before she arrived, I had just 24 hours before that, rumor from a very well-established source which said she's not coming, that she's made a public announcement in America that she's cancelled the trip to India. And I couldn't believe it, but and we checked, of course it was a false rumor, so I'm really delighted that she's here. Otherwise, we'd have quite a heart attack. So ladies and gentlemen, in 1988, after taking over as Prime Minister of Pakistan, she said, and I quote, "A ship in a port is safe, but that's not what ships are built for." Certainly not, madam. Your voyage has been through some very stormy waters. Her autobiography was titled Daughter of the East. I would call her a daughter of history. She was born into a family of power, privilege, and martyrdom. When her father, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the founder of Pakistan's People Party, became the Prime Minister in 1973, it marked the establishment of a true parliamentary democracy. Madam, life is full of small coincidences whose relevance sometimes comes to you much later. And I, in fact, realized one this evening, which relates, in fact, in a very indirect way to your family. In 1973, I was 29 years old then, so pretty wet behind the ears. I was running Thompson Press, which was, in fact, our first company of the India Day Group. And one of the first books we published, not printed, published, was Zulfi, My Friend, written by your father's Berkeley roommate, Pilu Modi. And I remember reading it then, and I must say I was extremely impressed, in fact somewhat envious, by your father's charisma, lifestyle, and flamboyance. And I'm sure a lot of people in this room remember the first glimpse of you as a beautiful 19-year-old girl with your father when he came to India to sign the historical Shimla agreement with Mrs. Gandhi. Like the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty, the Bhuttos would witness the pinnacle of political power and also plumb the depths of personal tragedy. When her father was jailed by his army chief, General Zia-ul-Haq, in 1977, Benazir, brimming with the undiluted idealism of a college graduate, believed that General Zia would honor his word about conducting elections. But her father corrected her and said, "Don't be an idiot, Pinky." I believe that was your pet name, madam. You had rosy cheeks as a baby. So that's not me saying so. And he went on to say, "Armies do not take power to relinquish it, nor do generals commit high treason in order to hold elections and restore democratic constitution." I'm sure, madam, those words must be ringing in your ears today as another general rules Pakistan. Your father was, of course, proved right. After a farcical trial, General Zia hanged him. It was a traumatic and transformative event which would make you one of Asia's most remarkable women. In 1988, Benazir Bhutto became the Prime Minister. To quote her own words, when I first got elected, they said, a woman has usurped a man's place. She would be killed. She would be assassinated. She has committed heresy. Her government later was dismissed when she was midway through her first term. She then returned to power in 1993, only to be dismissed again in 1996. Then, because of political persecution, she left Pakistan in 1999 and is yet to return. Today, ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan is once again at a critical juncture. Elections are to be held soon, and already President Musharraf has played his card by muzzling the judiciary. So the backlash, I believe, is not something he may have bargained for. He shows every sign of staying on as president and retaining his post as army chief. Not one to be daunted, Benazir Bhutto has joined forces with her one-time rival Nawaz Sharif. There is little doubt that the next few months would witness the toughest battle of her life. In fact, Benazir Bhutto demonstrated true grit in the face of adversity, and I sincerely hope that she will succeed in her democratic struggle. We in India know Pakistan's recent history all too well, in particular its descent again into dictatorship. India had to suffer another war in Kargil, be subjected to cross-border terrorism, which has resulted in a loss of over 30,000 lives since 1980. Despite professing peace and espousing new formulas for the settlement of the Kashmir issue, General Pervez Musharraf is today looked upon by much of India as someone who does not walk the talk. He still has somewhat of a trust deficit with us. Unfortunately, our mutually suspicious relationship bogs us down while the rest of the world is busy unifying markets and governance. We therefore need to change the tone, tenor, and direction of our relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to invite Mrs. Benazir Bhutto to address us and share her vision of how we can reinvent relations between India and Pakistan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege for me to join you this evening at India Today's Conclave in New Delhi to discuss the challenges for the brave new world. I first came to India as a teenager, visiting Shimla with my father in 1971 or 72. I still remember the warmth and affection with which the people of India greeted me, although at that time we were supposed to be the enemy. Following the Shimla Agreement signed between my father, Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1972, I came away from Shimla with a strong feeling that peace between India and Pakistan must endure. It gives me, therefore, great satisfaction that since the signing of the Shimla Agreement 35 years ago, India and Pakistan, although engaged in conflict, have not gone to full war against each other. The enormity of this is better understood when we appreciate that between 1947 and 1971, a period of 25 years, India and Pakistan fought 3 wars. As Prime Minister of Pakistan, I worked with Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi to build on the spirit of Shimla. Our governments signed the first agreements since Shimla, the agreement not to attack each other's nuclear installations as well as other agreements. And it was in 1988 at the SARC conference in Islamabad that I proposed we transform SAARC from a cultural organization into an economic one. The South Asian Preferential Tariff Agreement was born as a consequence. And in 1999, at an Indo-Pak Parliamentarians Conference in Islamabad, I proposed that India, Pakistan, and all the countries of South Asia put aside their differences to create a common market to eliminate our real enemies, which are poverty, hunger, unemployment, and backwardness. And I propose we do this through soft borders. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that Indo-Pak relations can be creatively reinvented. Time stands still for no one. The moving finger of history writes, and having written, moves on. Those of us in leadership positions in India today, in the media, in the think tanks, and in government have a choice to make. The choice is ours to write a success story of free markets, liberty, human rights, gender equality, and the common values of tolerance and interfaith understanding. The Pakistan People's Party, which I lead, and I, even in opposition, have tried to be part of this success story, co-authored with all the intellectuals, political parties, and leaders in our countries, yours and mine, who truly believe that the future welfare of humanity in our part of the world lies in cooperation. I see the world in terms of competing economic blocks that can best function in an environment of peace and security. I see the world as one where the have-nots can conquer poverty if we come together in an economy of scale similar to that done by Europe. For these ideas and for seeking peace with India, I was initially called a security risk by my critics in Pakistan. But ideas cannot be killed by character assassination. And in time, my political opponents, as well as the military establishment of my country, realized the importance of peace as a quality that makes or breaks a nation. So I'm proud that today, India and Pakistan are discussing ways and means to have open borders, soft borders, and to promote trade and travel. We still have a long way to go, but our journey has begun. Of course, the dangers are still there. Both our countries nearly came to war in 1999 in the icy glaciers known as Siachen. And both our armies stood eyeball to eyeball in confrontation in a deadly year-long confrontation following a terrorist attack on the Indian Parliament in December 2001. And the recent attack on the Samjhota Express this year once again demonstrated to us the fragility of a peace process that can be disrupted by those dedicated to violence. We know now that there is an emerging consensus between the political parties of India and Pakistan, an emerging consensus between our military and security establishments that peace must be established. And there is also an emerging consensus that the one serious danger to the peace process comes from the militants and the terrorists. The challenge for us is to therefore dismantle the militant cells so that they cannot hold the foreign policy of two independent nations hostage to their acts of terror. And it is in this connection that I welcome the decision by India and Pakistan to work together on anti-terrorism efforts and share information relating to terrorism. I commend Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and the Government of India for refusing to rise to the terrorist bait and blaming Islamabad when a militant strikes. The militants are our common enemies. They are the enemies of peaceful relations between our two countries. Both the governments of India and Pakistan are declaring their deep desire to resolve the Kashmir dispute, to build peaceful relations, and to work for greater economic cooperation. I welcome these efforts to reinvent our relations. However, there were many well-wishers who advised me to oppose the present peace process between India and Pakistan on two grounds. First, they argued that it lacked legitimacy as Pakistan is presently governed by a military regime which holds on to power by virtue of its military constituency. Secondly, they argued that since Indo-Pak relations and the Kashmiri dispute excite passions easily, by opposing the peace process as a sellout, we could mobilize public opinion against the military dictatorship in Pakistan and facilitate the transfer to democratic rule. And as some of you would know, the restoration of democracy is a cause dear to my heart. It is a cause for which my father and brothers laid down their lives, as did hundreds of party workers and others belonging to the democratic opposition. It is a cause for which my husband cumulatively spent 11.5 years of our 19-year marriage in prison without a conviction, and for which my brothers, mother, and I have spent long years in exile. Yet, my party and I did not choose that easy route to create mass frenzy, because it is our belief that the future happiness of all the people of South Asia lies in creating a peaceful environment that provides opportunities for our youth. I do agree that there are issues of legitimacy involved when a non-representative government negotiates, because I feel the people are not co-opted. And when I look at the situation of the tribal areas in Pakistan, where the Taliban have regrouped, I see it as an example of the non-co-option of people in a process. For despite 80,000 Pakistani troops being sent to the tribal areas of Pakistan, our regime was forced into signing a peace treaty with the militants due to the lack of popular participation or participation at the grassroots level of our people. And this proves my point that without political participation, it's difficult to make lasting advances. Today, it is a matter of satisfaction for those of us who envisaged open borders, trade and travel between India and Pakistan before it became fashionable to do so, to witness the Pakistani military dictatorship sign onto the peace process and commit itself to resolving issues with India in a peaceful manner. There are voices that claim that the present peace process with India is an eyewash meant to cover the regime in Islamabad in election year to neutralize the very active international Indian lobby. They argue that after stage managing the election schedule in Pakistan later this year, all it will take is one more militant attack to recreate the tensions that have marred Indo-Pakistan relations in the past. However, I do not believe that we should base our policies on fear. I believe the challenge for us to reinvent the future lies in building our policies by basing them on hope. And for that hope to be materialized and formalized, I believe that Islamabad needs to deal with the issue of both militancy and terrorism. Militancy and terrorism are the roots of violence, senseless destruction, and loss of lives. We have to protect innocent people of our countries by each one of us working for the dismantlement of militant groups, the elimination of terrorism, and the promotion of interfaith tolerance and harmony. These initiatives and objectives are all the more important in this, the 60th year of the independence of our country. For as many of you know, this August, both our nations will observe 60 years of independence. And in this, the 60th year of our independence, I propose that the leadership of India and Pakistan put an end to the destructive chapter in the lives of our countries. I propose that on the 60th anniversary of our nations this August, the leaders of our country meet together in a summit to declare their commitment to bring us the permanent tranquility and progress and prosperity that two neighboring countries must have. Ladies and gentlemen, I have made trade, not conflict, with India a top priority of my forthcoming electoral campaign in Pakistan, which I believe will start in November this year. At 60 years of age, we must pledge an end to war, terrorism, and death. For 60 years of freedom gives us the maturity to change our direction dramatically. I am committed to bringing peace between our two countries, and my commitment to peace began when I was a young child. I lived through the bombings of the 1965 war between our two countries. I heard the stories of the dead and of the homes destroyed and of the destruction of infrastructure which put both our countries backward in their quest to modernize. I saw my mother running to help the wounded and the injured. As a student at Harvard University in America, I joined up with my fellow students to protest the Vietnam War, a war they felt was unjust and did not want to fight. And since then, I have seen many more conflicts on televisions in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, between Iran and Iraq, and now civil war in Iraq. The more I see the devastation of war, of how the vultures descend to feed on the bodies of dead children, the more I am convinced that we must keep our region secure and peaceful, for we cannot fail our children. I see that India and China have a dispute with each other, but they do not go to war against each other. And I believe we must learn from this model to develop our own relations. As an undergraduate at Harvard University, I met your late Prime Minister Indira Gandhi at Shimla. I witnessed the first peace agreement signed by our two countries, and in the words of the famous American Secretary of State, Dean Acheson, I was present at the creation of the peace movement between our two countries. I am proud of the fact that during my 2 tenures in office, neither our peoples or our armies had to face a Kargil-like situation which left tens of thousands dead. I am proud of the fact that during both of my tenures in office, there were no terrorist attacks on Indian targets, such as the Bombay blasts or the Indian Parliament blast. It is not easy, as you know, to keep the peace, but my government did so and reined in the militants from Indian targets. On a separate note, we brought peace to Karachi too, taking on the militants there, and we brought peace to our tribal areas, where at that time narcotics barons had private militias. So my government has the capacity to take on the militants. My government also had the capacity to build nuclear weapons, but we chose to remain a nuclear-capable state instead of turning ourselves into a nuclear weaponized state during my tenure in office. And one of the ways that I tried to reinvent relations between Pakistan and India was to involve the military and intelligence personnel in the process. With terrorism now a global issue, cooperation between India and Pakistan to work on eliminating terrorism from the region offers us an important way to reinvent our relationship. I know that the hotline established by Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and myself between the military headquarters of our two countries has played no small part in preventing escalation of tensions on many occasions. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in societies both in India and Pakistan where there are islands of opulence amongst oceans of misery. I find it morally wrong that the gap between the rich and the poor seems to grow wider even as we create more billionaires in our countries. And I find it hard to understand how in the third millennium so many should die because they do not have access to drinking water, or when they do have access to drinking water, it is often contaminated. We should band together to fight this hunger and disease. We should band together to fight discrimination and bigotry against minorities. And we should band together in a political and economic condominium that could be a model to the entire world of what the future holds. And there is so much that we can learn from each other. All the countries of South Asia, except Burma and Pakistan, are military dictatorships. And all the countries of South Asia, except Burma and Pakistan, have civilian control over the military and the conduct of foreign policy of their nation. I remember studying the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 in America. And the American military was prepared to go to war over the Cuban Missile Crisis. If they were in charge of American foreign policy, there could have been a war between the two superpowers which would have led 100 million people dead. But American foreign policy was in the control of a civilian. And President John F. Kennedy did not use the military option. And that showed to me the importance of civilian control over the military. Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who was once my rival, and I have signed a Charter of Democracy. And this Charter of Democracy commits both our parties to a framework of peace and justice for our own people and for peace and friendship with India. Last year, President Bush said in his annual State of the Union address, and I quote, "Dictatorships shelter terrorists and feed resentment and radicalism and seek weapons of mass destruction. Democracies replace resentment with hope, respect the rights of their citizens and their neighbors, and join the fight against terror." I agree with President Bush on the nature of dictatorships, and I have dedicated my life working for the restoration of democracy in Pakistan. In the last election of October 2002, I was not allowed to fight that contest. Yet, despite the hurdles put in our way, and despite the international observers calling the elections flawed, the Pakistan People's Party, which I lead, was the largest vote getter, getting nearly 26% of the vote. I understand that is similar to the number of votes that the Congress Party won in the elections of 2004. But unfortunately in Pakistan, the parliamentary session was indefinitely postponed to fracture my party's support. And had it not been postponed, I would have formed a government like Mrs. Sonia Gandhi did after the 2004 elections. I am fully on the side of the people of Pakistan. My late and beloved father Zulfikar Ali Bhutto named our party Pakistan People's Party, and we have a long history of fighting for the people of Pakistan. And I have fought dictators before, as has my party. I will fight them again in the election campaign of 2007, and I intend to win. Some have asked why I am returning to Pakistan, and the answer is simple. Pakistan is my home, and I have long ago accepted my responsibilities of leadership. I didn't choose this life. It chose me. I have been honored by the people of Pakistan to be twice elected their Prime Minister. And during the time of my service in that role, the religious parties never won more than 3% representation in the Parliament of Pakistan. A democratic Pakistan, standing next to a democratic India and a democratic Afghanistan, can start to turn around our part of the world. On the issue of Kashmir, we must make a viable peace. This is a solvable problem that must not take further lives. Pending a final settlement, I agree with the statement of your Prime Minister supporting an autonomous Kashmir running much of its own affairs. A commission can be established between the two countries and the leaders of Kashmir themselves to work out what should be done in foreign and defense affairs. But while working out the solution to Kashmir, we should not allow slow progress on it to be an obstacle to work in other matters of cooperation. And there are several ways to reinvent our relations. These include economic integration, business cooperation, media exchanges, transportation links, energy requirements, sports, entertainment, information technologies, and the peaceful uses of nuclear energy in medicine, education, and agriculture. I remember that economic integration brought Europe the peace it enjoyed since World War II concluded. The Europeans started the European Coal and Steel Community. Jean Monnet, a French economist, and Robert Schuman, the French foreign minister, saw this vital industry as critical to waging war. And so they brought the major European countries together to control steel and to control coal, thereby stopping the war-making capacity of an individual European nation, especially of France and Germany. It was the first step that the Europeans took to blunt the instrument of war-making in their continent. And there is no reason why we cannot do the same in the South Asian subcontinent. A dear friend of mine who helped bring China and the United States together told me that the two-way trade between China and the United States in 1972 was $25 million, which was done indirectly through Hong Kong. And now, from 1972 to 2007, U.S.-China direct trade is over $200 billion. That trade and other factors have made China the huge economic machine it now is. And that is the kind of future I see that awaits our people. Regarding transportation links, a start has been made with the bus journey between Srinagar and Muzaffarabad and the train between New Delhi and Lahore. And I hope that we can increase these links, eliminate visa restrictions, and remember that when we can travel between France and Germany, two old enemies, the train or bus no longer stops anymore for police and customs checks because people feel so safe. Energy resources are vital to our economies, and the closest readily available energy source of hydrocarbons is in Central Asia. My government implemented my father's proposal to build Gwadar Port in Balochistan, Pakistan's largest province, to bring Central Asian oil and gas to the world markets through Pakistan. And my government agreed to building pipelines for oil and gas to be pumped across Pakistan to India. And I intend to make these plans a top priority for my country, to bring gas and oil from Central Asia to the people of Balochistan in Pakistan and to export them to India, which needs to import oil and gas. The political instability of Afghanistan hampers trade with Central Asia. And so controlling terrorism in the tribal areas of Pakistan is a priority for my people and for the government we hope to make. A peaceful and democratic India, Pakistan and Afghanistan can bring enormous benefits in this program. In addition, Pakistan is one of the richest shale deposits in the world. A new low-cost technology is now available to get usable energy from shale and the residue in water. And we can share both technology and the product with your country. We have seen the excitement of our people when the sport teams visit each other. And we must let the people come and go between our two countries to see these sporting events more easily than they presently do. The Prime Minister of Azad Kashmir, Pakistan-controlled Kashmir, has welcomed investment from all regions, including from Indian-controlled Kashmir. He has offered gas and electricity across the line of control. Discussing such proposals can bring us closer. The devastating earthquake in 2005 demonstrated that disaster knows no geographical boundaries. People on both sides of the line of control were killed. It was a terrible tragedy, and it awoke in our minds the need for us to work together, even on issues such as disaster control. The entertainment industry in India is huge, and it's growing in Pakistan too. There must be no boundaries between our countries in this area either. Both our countries have detonated nuclear devices in May 1998. We have proved to the world that we are firmly in the group of countries that have nuclear weapons. We do not have to prove our military prowess anymore. And so let us turn our investment towards the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. After all, people in France get 80% of their electricity from nuclear methods. I have listed a few of the areas to the India Today conclave on which India and Pakistan can reinvent their relations. And before concluding, I would like to remind you about the small peace park that is across the United Nations headquarters in New York City. And in that small peace park, there is an inscription that reads, and I quote, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. No nation shall not lift up sword against another nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." And it was Mahatma Gandhi who said, and Mahatma Gandhi believed in peaceful movements, and he said, "An eye for an eye only makes the whole world blind." Let us not be blind. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.